Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, General, for your comments about defense. I chair the Subcommittee on Strategic Forces on Armed Services, and we've had numerous discussions on that since we have jurisdiction over space as a warfighting domain. So I appreciated your comments. You guys are really good storytellers. I have a short amount of time here, so I'd like specific answers. I need to leave for another hearing, and there's some things I'd like to get through. So, Mr. Gold, I'm not picking on you first, but Mr. Gold, should China be the first to establish a permanent presence on the moon, there would be serious consequences for Americans. You've spoken to that in the past, as had the administrator. I want to hear some specific examples from you on how the lives of Americans would be impacted should China establish control of the moon's resources, so Americans can reach out and touch what would really happen to their lives.
The potential wealth of the moon is extraordinary and candidly even unknown at
You're
this
telling me a story.
Well, let me put it this way. China lands on the moon. The next day, we see tremendous benefits to China geopolitically, where our allies turn to them not only for space exploration, but for national security agreements, for trade agreements. The meeting that's occurring now between China, India, and Russia that you're seeing today, if China lands on the moon first, that will deepen and strengthen those economic ties. China is very good at leveraging space to drive the dime assets that Jim Bridenstine and the General are talking about. If they get there first, we will see a global realignment that will impact our economy, our tax base, our ability to innovate, and our national security in terms of diplomacy and geopolitics that will affect security and many other aspects of our daily lives.
Thank you very much. Administrator, while at NASA, you helped lead the Artemis Accords and establish that framework for the principles to guide civil space exploration. China has their own framework, the internal lunar research station that's there. Can you, first of all, speak to the importance of the Accords and then speak to the risk that that we would see with those principles if they start to erode, the risk we have there for future deep space exploration, since China then would establish that permanent presence on the moon?
Excellent question. A couple of things that I think are important to note. You know, when we established the Artemis Accords, it was because, and this is important, so important. We went to an event where there was a lot of international players in the space domain, and we said, hey, we're thinking about creating a moon program. In fact, we are going to create a moon program. If you'd like to participate, come to a meeting. We had like 26 countries show up, and they were so enthusiastic about being part of the moon program. It was overwhelming. And so when that was over, I came back and I called Mike Gold and I said, look, we need to figure out a way to use this as a compelling way to get people to behave properly in space, because in many ways they don't. and so I actually got Mike Gold to come to NASA to run this effort called what he termed the Artemis Accords. And at the end of the day, what we have to have is rules. So if we're going to go extract resources from the moon, there have to be rules around that. And those rules, I think, are established in law and precedent when you think about international waters. You know, just because you extract tuna from the ocean doesn't mean you own the ocean, but you get to own the tuna. And if you extract energy from the ocean, you don't own the ocean, but you own the energy. Those same principles should apply to the moon. If you extract platinum group metals, or what we call rare earth metals, or in this case, rare lunar metals, if you extract that from the moon and you apply your sweat and your equity and your effort to get those resources, you don't own the moon. The Outer Space Treaty says you can't appropriate the moon for national sovereignty. However, you can own the resources that you extract from the moon, and I think that's an important principle that we as Americans need to be leading the world on, and that's what the Artemis Accords were all about. And that's why I got Mike Gold to come lead that effort.
Great. Thank you. Also, Administrator, when we look at trying to remain competitive with China in deep space, there's going to be an increased demand for commercial launches. Do you assess that demand will outstrip existing launch capacity? And if so, what can be done in order to expand that capacity that we currently have?
Oh my gosh, that's that's an important question and very challenging. The answer is yes, we're already over capacity. Our launch facilities are basically stretching and twisting and doing everything they can to put more launch capability into the same amount of space. A couple of things I think it's important to note. I want to be clear, the architecture for the Artemis program is strained, to say the least. I would also say that we need, in many cases, we need Starship to be successful for a whole host of capabilities. It's also true that if they do what they're setting out to do, there's going to be over 100 launches from Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center per year from Starship. And in each one of those launches, that also means there's going to be testing, there's going to be landing, there's going to be a lot of different things happening. Each time that's going to end up shutting down those facilities. And it puts us in a position where we could end up with basically one launch provider if we don't figure out how to solve this problem. I do believe that over time, there's going to be other opportunities to launch from different locations. We're not there right now. When I'm talking about inland launch, from Oklahoma, we have a spaceport. Right now, we'd have to drop something on Kansas, and I know Senator Moran doesn't want us dropping anything on Kansas. So we don't want to do that. But I do think it's important that we try to find alternative solutions for launch, initially on the coasts, but eventually we're going to have to come to inland launch at some point.
When you look at overall launch capacity and the impact that these heavy launch vehicles have on the existing infrastructure, I think, yes, we do have to be able to look beyond where we are now. And Space Force determines the launch pad allocations. So we have a tie-in there between these committees, each within their own jurisdiction, specific jurisdiction over different parts of what we're discussing here today. Thank you.
Thank you.